from the University of Kansas Health System.
I am amazed. The team here is great.
I came on a Tuesday, and then by Saturday I had a heart in me.
I have never seen a group of people work together so good as this team of heart specialists. I mean, it's just unreal.
Stand by to set up show.
And the Dolph C. Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio.
Roll.
Always makes you feel like you're the most important patient on the planet.
I felt heard, and that was really big.
This is All Things Heart.
Good morning, I'm Alexis Del Cid. Welcome to Season 3 of All Things Heart. And this season we have a new time slot, 8 a.m., so let's get started. Today's topic would be any parent's nightmare when a 21-year-old about to start his senior year at K-State got a stomach ache during his summer internship in Colorado. He didn't think much of it, but when he got back to Manhattan and he still had it, he went to the doctor, still not thinking much of it. 3 days later, he was on life support and waiting for a heart transplant. All this while he and his family thought he was the picture of health. We'll explain the diagnosis, why doctors think it happened, and the signs to look out for in yourself and your loved ones. Plus, we know our medical teams here are phenomenal. That's just a given. But these medical miracle workers also have a softer side. And we're taking you behind the mask to let you get to know them a bit better outside these hospital walls. And of course, you, our viewers, you are the heartbeat of this program. We love answering your questions. So you can tweet them to us. You can send your questions to us in real time on YouTube, Facebook, and at the All Things Heart email. You can find all those links right there on your screen. Basically, we're everywhere. You can always get a hold of us. Okay, now to William Halliburton. It was the 21-year-old senior year at K-State when he went to the doctor for a stomach ache that had begun over the summer. 3 days later, he was here at the health system clinging to life and in line for a new heart.
21-year-old William Halliburton is studying construction science at K-State. He was finishing up an internship the summer before his senior year when he noticed a pain in his stomach.
I've hurt myself before. It's not an uncommon thing, doing a lot of stuff around here. And so, after a little while, the pain gets better, or the symptoms kind of start to go away, and these symptoms weren't going away.
He went to the ER in Manhattan, Kansas. There, doctors discovered it was not his stomach, but his heart. And serious enough, they needed to transfer him to Kansas City.
William walked into the emergency room and he wanted to walk out of the hospital, and the doctors were telling us, no, you can't walk out. We need to put you in an ambulance and transfer you, which was, I guess, really kind of the first recognition of the fact that this is a lot more serious than a stomach ache.
Doctors called William's mother with devastating news. Her son was in heart failure.
They said his heart is running at 10% capacity or less, and that they needed to do some things to help his heart.
The doctors recommended implanting a heart pump to assist William's heart.
You would never expect it to happen to your child, who's 21 and young and seems to be very healthy. And so the whole thing just kept like, is this really happening?
After 2 surgeries, William's heart was still not working. Doctors said William needed life support and a new heart.
We needed to be considering the fact that William could be placed on heart transplant list, which you hear about it, it's just never what you think would happen to your child or your family.
It was all happening fast. William was admitted to a Manhattan hospital on Monday, transferred to the University of Kansas Health System on Tuesday, underwent 2 surgeries Wednesday, and placed on life support Thursday.
That Saturday we got a call. They said they had a donor that was a young donor, a male, and somebody that they felt like the donor's heart would be good for William's size. I'm ecstatic, I'm excited, I'm scared to death, and I'm sad for the donor family.
I don't know how I say anything else other than thank you. I wouldn't be here.
My hopes and dreams are that he recognizes his second chance at life and that he just continues to look forward.
We are so happy to have William Halliburton joining us virtually along with his mom. You doing okay, Jennifer? I could see it getting to you. We're also joined by his two surgeons, Dr. Matt Danter and Dr. Tyler Zorn. Thank you both for being here. We'll get to you guys in a second. First of all, William, how are you feeling now?
I'm good, thank you.
How long has it been since the actual transplant?
A year as of a couple days ago.
So the year anniversary just passed. Are you feeling back to normal, back to your old self?
I would say yes.
That's remarkable. Jennifer, take us back to the moment you get that call that your son, who's 21, you thought he was perfectly healthy, he's in heart failure. That must have just been surreal.
Yeah, it's not what you ever plan for. And you know, when William went into the hospital, we knew it was serious, and we knew that there were some major things going on. But it wasn't on my list of anything I could possibly imagine. So.
Right. I mean, as a mom of a 16-year-old, I can tell you we worry about so many things. You have a 21-year-old at college. Right. You're worrying about all these things in your mind. You're never worrying about their heart, especially looking at William. So that's why I want to bring in our doctors, Dr. Zorn and Dr. Danter, because we have some images of William's heart in the screen here. Dr. Zorn, I'll start with you. This was his heart when you first saw it. What are we seeing here that's so off?
Yeah, so this is when I first met William and his family. I also seen his echo for the first time. He was on maximum medical support. He already had what we talked about, the balloon pump in place. And what you see right here is an echocardiogram, which is an ultrasound of a patient's heart. And you would normally see these two chambers at the top of the screen, both the right and the left heart, with the walls coming in, blood pumping through these. Coming in through these valves and coming out different valves, and what you see is a heart that's basically not working. He also has, what we call an LV thrombus, which is when blood really pulls in the heart rather than being ejected out. It can form these thrombus and really added to the complexity of his case.
So William said his heart, he was told his heart was operating at only 10%. So Dr. Danter, how does a guy like William go through a summer internship in Colorado? He's young, he looks healthy, he's completed 3 years of college. How is this guy walking around with a heart only 10%?
Well, yeah, with young people in particular, it can be very, very long before they actually manifest the symptoms of advanced heart failure, because they're otherwise so well that they can compensate for it. In terms of trying to understand the why of this or how it happens, we're often at a loss as well. It often could be some virus that they encountered, some congenital or inherited affliction. But the truth is, it's sometimes just sporadic, and we don't have an explanation for it. We just have to sort of apply the tools that we have to deal with the situation at the time. Yeah.
We have some more images that we want to share with our viewers, because before his heart transplant, William was put on ECMO, which is a form of life support, and we have a chest X-ray of his heart while on ECMO. So what are we looking at in this chest X-ray?
Yeah, so this is a standard chest X-ray with lungs on both sides and a heart in the middle. What you see is a big dilated heart consistent with cardiomyopathy, or a heart that's not working. You can see some kind of dense objects coming up through the bottom of the screen. That's one of his ECMO cannulas that sits.
So these are the.
This is. Show you.
Yeah, or you can tell. Oh, we'll get you back hooked up with your earpiece.
You see, this is one of the ECMO cannulas here. And then this is the balloon pump on the right side or the left side of the screen. And then this is actually a Swan-Ganz catheter, which measures pressures in the heart, give us more information on how things are going.
I want to bring in Dr. Danter again, because we have some before and after. So we have his old heart to show you on the left, and we have his new heart on the right. And Dr. Danter, while you're telling us what we're looking at, I'm going to walk over here and fix Dr. Zorn's ear.
Sure. So the one on the screen left is the one we saw before, where the heart's barely moving, and then his new heart. The things that are most striking are, first off, that there's much more movement, and that the chambers are squeezing much more vigorously. furthermore, you can see that it's much less dilated and it's actually smaller than the previous images. The new heart itself had a completely normal ejection fraction and heart function. So,
wow, you can definitely tell when you see them side by side. Not as someone who's not a doctor, when I look at the first picture, it just looks like a medical image to me, but seeing it next to the healthy heart.
The first image is about as bad as a heart can look, really, in terms of how poorly it's functioning. So on the left, you have a normal, or sorry, on the right side, the after image
which is a healthy one.
Normal heart, yeah.
Dr. Zorn, you placed William on ECMO. Can you explain to our viewers what ECMO is? A lot of us didn't hear the word ECMO until COVID when we started reporting on it.
Right. Well, you have different forms of ECMO, ECMO for the lungs, ECMO for the heart. To kind of understand ECMO, you need to know a little bit of basic anatomy and physiology. Arterial blood goes out, oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich to the body, comes back via veins, which is oxygen deplete, carbon dioxide high, goes to the right side of the heart. Right side of the heart pumps blood to the lungs, gets oxygen, gets rid of carbon dioxide, goes to the left side of the heart, and it's pumped out to the rest of the body, where that cycle repeats itself over and over again. So when somebody's fallen off the cliff, like William was, you have a decision, you're on maximum medical support, you're on a balloon pump, you have to decide, is this patient a good candidate for advanced therapies?
And we were just showing some video of another patient who was on ECMO, not William. How long can someone be placed on ECMO, and how long was William on ECMO?
Yeah, so like we said, there's different forms of ECMO, lung ECMO and cardiac ECMO, and so for patients, that are just being placed on it for their lungs, like we learned about in COVID, we can really push the bounds of how long we could keep people on, in the order of months, sometimes close up to a year. But that's really, that's an extraordinary amount of time. Most of the time it's measured in weeks for the lungs, and then we talk about for VA ECMO, for cardiac support, it's much less, and we know complications accrue much quicker. Patients are usually limited in what they're in bed. And so really we like to get people to their final destination when we put people on ECMO support for the heart as quick as possible.
William, what do you remember about being placed on ECMO and what it felt like?
It was all kind of a blur, but I don't know. You just remember having 2 giant tubes come out of your thighs to then be able to pump blood to the rest of your body.
2 giant tubes. So William, were you awake and conscious and talking? Because that's pretty rare that you're awake for it, right?
It's very rare. Really, he was probably one of the first ones we've had in our ICU that was awake and extubated on ECMO, because he was so stable with his ECMO platform, and he was young, and otherwise his lungs were fine. So,
Jennifer, I got to bring you back in here, and this is your baby that you're seeing this happen to. He's 21, he thinks he's a grown-up, but as a mom, he's always going to be your baby. What's going through your mind when you're in the hospital seeing this?
So it's really extraordinary. It's you realize the life-saving, the life-giving support that he's on, but the amount of equipment and the amount of personnel to manage the situation is extraordinary. It's a well orchestrated, the whole process of the medical staff while they looked after William while he was on ECMO was pretty intense, but it was an incredible thing to watch. It's a little overwhelming as a parent when you see your child hooked up, but you also realize that this is the thing that gets you to the next opportunity.
Right, it's life-saving, and it got you to William's new heart, which I want to ask Dr. Danter about. He's only 21, and heart failure is detected by a stomach ache at first. A lot of people who get stomach aches, so that's very, very worrying. Is that typical, that it starts out as a stomach ache?
No, I'd say that's a rather late finding. But like we talked about before, people
like what's happening to cause the stomach ache?
Well, basically, what's happened by the time William presented, he was in biventricular failure, meaning both sides of the heart were not working properly, and as a consequence of that, you get a lot of congestion in the abdominal organs and venous congestion, because the heart is not only not pumping out properly, but it's also not having any sort of throughput, because the right side is also in failure. And it's a consequence of being an otherwise healthy person that they can present very late. It's not really a typical presentation either, per se, but it's one that, you know, you have to give credit to the people that saw him initially to at least think that this could be partially related to his heart. And then when you get the echo and the imaging, it's relatively straightforward sometimes when you're a heart surgeon, because the imaging doesn't lie to you that much.
Right.
And then it becomes an issue of the team managing the problems appropriately. I mean, it is jarring to have a young person, you know, present this dramatically. And in the people we've had in the past that have presented similarly, it's always a question of trying to figure out why and what happens. And often, like I said before, we don't really have a true, you know, single thing we can put our finger on and say it's absolutely this. It more, from our standpoint, becomes a management sort of concern and a management strategy that we need to come up with. But
William, when you look back, do you now see there might have been signs that you just didn't notice before the stomach ache? Was there anything else you can remember?
Yeah, there was a little swelling, I'd say, in my legs, and then now that I'm looking back, I had a little bit of yellow. It tinged my skin, so that would be signs that my liver's not working correctly.
Okay. And are those the signs then people need to be looking at? Swelling, a tinge to the skin, things like that?
Yeah, more typically it's, you know, you get shorter breath, early fatigue, ability, lack of exercise tolerance, chest pain sometimes, but shortness of breath. But this is a late finding, but for most kids they get, you know, they're not feeling that well and they just sort of power through it, and it's just fortunate that things were recognized when they were, and then you got the appropriate therapies.
Jennifer, are you trying to watch him like a hawk now? Every time you talk to him on the phone?
I would say initially, but and William would probably concur that I've been a little more hands-on than maybe he'd like. But you know,
okay.
you have to trust and have faith that that we will all walk another day, right? And so William is doing extraordinarily well. He's impressed all of us. He's strong, both mentally and physically, and we couldn't be more proud of him. We're super excited that, you know, he has an opportunity at life with a different filter that allows him to think about, you know.
And speaking of William's recovery, Well, speaking of William's recovery, when your doctors walked into the studio and they saw you, they said, wow, this is the first we've seen him since all of this, because you were in and out so quickly. Your recovery was pretty remarkable. How long did it take from after your surgery till you started to feel like your old self again?
I would say probably to the beginning of May. It just took a while to get back into the swing of things, you know. A lot to wrap your head around.
What was the hardest part of your recovery?
Making sure that I'm not doing something that I shouldn't be doing.
That's where Mom comes in. Don't be mad at her for watching you closely. She's doing her job. Right. We're getting a lot of questions from our community, and I want to get to some of those. And remember, you can Facebook us, send us messages on the X platform, email us. Jean wrote in. Jean wants to know, is William's heart issue genetic? And along those lines, Bill wants to know, if it is genetic, is there a test you can get to see if you'd have the same issue? I'll start with Dr. Danter.
Like often occurs, we don't specifically have some sort of smoking gun, you know, gene test that says that this is what William's specific problem was. For people who are experiencing heart failure symptoms, There are certain tests that we can do for very specific forms of heart failure. Like I said, not specifically related to Williams form. And often, as a parent myself, this is one of the more terrifying things that can occur, because you can literally get a virus, a common cold a few weeks prior to something, and the next thing you know, you're in this situation. It happens very infrequently and very rarely, but it's the thing that keeps parents up at night. The reality is there are, yes, specific genetic tests for very specific forms of heart failure, but in Williams' specific case, we don't have a clear, definitive virus or genetic abnormality or anything that we can put our finger on.
When you say virus, I know my mind goes to COVID. I mean, whose mind doesn't go to COVID? So, William, did you have COVID before this? Do you remember having a cold or any sort of virus?
Never.
So it's truly a mystery.
Yeah,
what it could have been.
That's where doctors make up fancy words like idiopathic, which means we don't know what it is.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So if you hear that. Jill has a question. Jill just wrote in. She would like to know, will his new heart last a lifetime? Who wants to take that one? Dr. Zorn?
Well, probably not. We know that, that an organ in somebody else's body will, we have to give medications to keep them from rejecting over the long term, but over a number of years, hopefully in the order of decades, his body will slowly reject that new heart. But there are opportunities for redo heart transplants second and third time, and so we have to be vigilant with watching Williams' heart, biopsying when appropriate. Making sure he's on the right medications to allow this heart that he's got right now to last as long as we can get it.
Our Facebook viewer Yen Liang wants to know if moderate aerobic exercise makes heart valves healthier. Dr. Danter, does it?
Moderate aerobic exercise makes your whole body healthier. Specifically, not, I'm not aware it specifically makes your valves healthier, but it makes your sort of general cardiovascular health better, definitely.
Byron has a question for Dr. Danter. How do you find a good match for a heart transplant? Do you go by blood type, age, the health of that person?
So finding an appropriate match is actually a pretty complicated and nuanced approach. But those are a lot of the specific things that we look at are, of course, blood group, any sort of preformed antibodies that the recipient may have to the donor, age, and then sort of suitability of other aspects of the donor organs. So absence of significant coronary artery disease or valvular disease, absence of hypertrophy or thickening of the ventricle wall. You're looking for a good sort of hematologic match, a good size match, and a good age match for the most part. And that can be challenging sometimes, because sometimes you have to say no to an otherwise reasonable organ when it doesn't fit the sort of
that person,
the recipient as well. Yeah. So we got very fortunate in terms of the age match and things of that nature for William, but along that process you sometimes get called about, oh, there's a 52-year-old heart and wherever, and you're like, and someone's as sick as he was, and you're like, well, do we take this knowing that it may be less than ideal, or do we wait? And that's often the hardest decision to make when you're assessing organs, is and making these decisions, which it's often 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're trying to make sure that you make the right decision for the right patient. But it's not as straightforward as just as blood group or age. It's actually relatively nuanced.
Jennifer, Valerie has a question for you, and we all saw how grateful you are and how many emotions it comes with when you think of the heart that's now beating inside your son. Valerie wants to know if you've been able to make contact with the donor family.
We have been in correspondence with the donor family, and at some point, it would be William's choice to determine, does he want to meet in person? But I say prayers every day for that family, thank them.
Yeah, how do you even say thank you for a gift like that? William, do you remember when you first opened your eyes after the transplant? What do you remember from that moment?
I don't have a very good recollection of it. You know, you're on a bunch of medication that make your mind go a bit cloudy, but
bunch of fuzzy faces leaning over you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to go back to school full time now? Where does that stand with K-State?
Yeah, I'm in school currently right now at K-State.
Nice. And you're like the bionic man now. You're still on course to get the degree you planned on?
Currently in the process.
Nice. Well, I want to bring back the whole panel for some final thoughts. And William, I want to continue with you. What do you want people watching to know, or even if the donor family is watching, what would you want them to know?
Don't take every day for granted. You know, you never know. Mm-hmm. It could be a heart transplant that you need, or you just never know what you're gonna run into.
Jennifer, you had the nicest thing to say about William's care team, so I just want to play a little bit of this right now.
We marveled at the true sense of care, thoughtfulness, and thoroughness that the doctors and nurses all had. And what really stood out to us was the coordinated efforts of the team, that it was truly a team effort, and that the left hand had to know what the right hand was doing, and that they were all working in concert.
What a great compliment, doctors, and to see this patient and his mom doing so well. Dr. Zorn, what's your response?
I don't know. I think it just makes us probably realize how fortunate we are to do what we do. We don't always get the luxury to see patients and their families this far out. It really is a pleasure and great to see.
You get to see the end of the story, or at least the next chapter of it. Dr. Danter, this has to feel incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to get a little romantic about heart surgery now and again, and it's deserved. I think it's great. You know, Tyler's right. It's affirming for us, you know, when we see people doing so well, because we have the other times too when it's not. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're trying to do one impossible thing at a time just to get through the procedure or the next phase of things, and when people do as well as William has done, it gives us sort of sometimes what we need to keep going, and that's very valuable to us, and we appreciate it.
Oh, that's really sweet. Well, we have one more segment for our viewers, and we love bringing you this next segment because we know your doctors do incredible things here at the health system, but what do you guys like outside of work?
Now for a secret look into the guardians of healthcare at the University of Kansas Health System. Let's go behind the mask.
All right, we're going behind the mask. We're going to start with Dr. Matthew Danter because we have some pictures of some pretty adorable back-to-school kids. Who are we looking at?
These are my kids. This is my family. My oldest daughter Maya, my wife Sherry, my middle daughter Kayla, and my youngest Alyssa. And this is our new puppy we just got.
What's her name?
That's Penny. She's currently eating something of mine, probably.
Like a sock or something.
There's my wife and my oldest going to the Taylor Swift concert.
Oh my gosh, how fun. Yeah. That's great. So are any of your girls want to be doctors?
I think they go back and forth all the time. I don't think they want to be heart surgeons, but they want to be doctors sometimes, or dentist or a veterinarian or something.
Something like that. Yeah, well, you have a new puppy, so they can find out. Hopefully it all stays good there. Up next, we want to go to Dr. Tyler Zorn because you are also a busy dad at home. Tell us about your kiddos.
Yeah, we have 4. Oldest is a girl, Cameron, she's 16. The next one's Preston, 13. John Hudson is 10. And Levi is 7. They're a handful, but they're great.
Any budding doctors? Your girl?
Cameron, the oldest one, thinks she wants to be a doctor. So
nice.
We'll see. They all got time.
That's awesome. And real quick, you lost your voice earlier this week. What happened?
I went to Orlando to watch the Seminoles beat up on LSU, so pretty excited about that. So I don't have much left for tonight.
Yeah, so what are you going to do tonight? Just going to sit in a corner?
Something like that.
Sip some tea?
I'll get rid of the rest of it tonight, I guess.
Speaking of the Chiefs, we just had an amazing day yesterday. We're only hours away from the first game of the 2023 season. And yesterday on Red Wednesday, I caught up with Clark Hunt, the CEO of our 3-time Super Bowl champs. That feels so good to say it, as he helped sell special commemorative flags that benefit the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Kansas City.
We have such a great partnership with the health system. They've been a huge part of our success over the last decade. Their employees are so supportive of the organization. So fun to see everybody wearing red this morning, including you. Yeah. Thank you. So we're excited to get the season underway and really appreciate the health system and their many contributions to the organization over the last 10 years.
This is the 10th year in a row the Chiefs have done this for the Ronald McDonald House with the commemorative flags. And in the 9 years before this, they raised $4.5 million, which is life-changing for so many families who are able to stay at the Ronald McDonald House in Kansas City when their kids are here for life-saving medical care. Chiefs take on the Detroit Lions tonight at Arrowhead. Thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you to our guests and to William and Jennifer and our doctors. We appreciate it. Coming up next week on All Things Heart.
They told me that this was what they would call the silent heart attack, the widowmaker.
Everyone loves a good nap, right? But for this guy, these naps started to feel different. On the next All Things Heart, how your sleep habits impact your heart and what a sleep study can reveal about your heart health. That's next Thursday morning at 8 a.m. See you then.
Coming up Friday on the Morning Medical Update. Cancer puts your body, mind, and spirit to the test. Stephanie Jones knew as soon as she was diagnosed that she would need help keeping her mind right. I'm Jessica Lovell on the next Morning Medical Update. The power of a positive mindset and the special psychological needs of cancer patients. Friday at 8.